Hello and welcome to Lyra Nara. In today's video we're going to talk about a very important subject, and that is 5G, the fifth generation of mobile communication or wireless communication technology that is being rolled out as we speak. And some experts have called it the health apocalypse, the health catastrophe. Some have even gone as far as calling it Armageddon, an extinction event, and even a genocide. And in this presentation, we're going to talk about all the scientific facts that matter, show you all the studies. We're going to talk about the proven negative health effects of EMFs in that range. Also about the effects these EMFs have on our environment and the weaponization and surveillance potential they hold. And of course, as always, we're gonna show you what you can do about it, how you can protect yourself, because believe it or not, you cannot shield yourself off completely from it, but there are some ways in which you can counteract the negative effects of this technology. So let's dive right in and learn more about 5G. So let's start by clarifying what we are talking about. Here you have the whole electromagnetic spectrum. You see that on the right hand of the spectrum you have what is called ionizing electromagnetic radiation, such as radioactive sources or medical X-rays. That's not what we're talking about. We're talking about the range in the middle that is also called the microwave range, where we have cell phone technology or the ranges of cell phones, but also microwave ovens, Wi-Fi, smart meters, satellites, even baby monitors and cordless phones. And on the left hand of the spectrum you have what is called radio frequencies, mobile AM FM radio, television, etc. And you must be aware of the fact that nowadays there is 10 billion times more electromagnetic radiation in our environment than there was in the 1960s. And just for a better understanding, the second generation and the third generation of the cell phone network, they worked in the range of 1.8 gigahertz in the microwave range. The 4G, the fourth generation, was at 2.6 gigahertz, and the 5G cell phone network that is being rolled out right now is in between 20 and 300 gigahertz. Wi-Fi networks also fall in the microwave range, as you can see also from the graph. They work at 2.4 gigahertz, but they are being rolled out now also at 5 gigahertz, and they will be eventually even going to 60 gigahertz. According to the industry, to the telecom industry, 5G is the next best thing after warm sliced bread. It will be faster, it will be better, it will offer you more reliable data transfer, up to 100 times faster, up to 100 times more data capabilities. And it will also enable what is called the Internet of Things, where everything, all the appliances, your cars, everything will be connected to each other. Will also enable us to introduce what is called the smart homes and the smart cities that you hear so much about. And what this technology means is that we will have millions of antennas at close proximity to us humans that will result in a dense microwave soup that you simply cannot escape, because 5G technology requires transmitters, so an antenna at 150 meters distance. So at about every 2 blocks you will need an antenna, and also you will need antennas in your home to make it work. And those are high-geared dielectric lens antennas which create a concentrated spherical beam. There are also plans to launch 20,000 satellites to send focus beams of intense microwave radiation over the entire Earth. And this will mean around-the-clock 24/7 exposure to an EMF soup that really adds up. And current radiation levels already are 1 quintillion times above the natural background radiation according to Dr. Ole Johansson of the Karolinska Institute in Sweden. And this will get even worse with 5G, of course. The radiation also measured around the transmitters that have been put up already is much higher than, for example, the Council of Europe 1815 resolution. It has been measured to be up to 5 or 6 times even higher. When you read the bioinitiative report that I highly recommend, it states that this should be even less than what this European Council of European guidelines suggests to be safe. And keep also in mind that all humans, whether you feel it or not, are affected by EMFs. I would like to show you how important that subject is and how crazy it is that we roll this out without any safety testing through a code by Martin L. Paul, who is a PhD, a professor emeritus of biochemical and medical sciences at Washington State University, and he had the following to say about 5G. Quote, "Putting in tens of millions of 5G antennas without a single biological test of safety has to be the stupidest idea anyone has had in the history of the world." End quote. So why had Dr. Paul this to say about 5G? What is the problem with 5G? Let's talk about the proven biological effects and the health hazards of EMFs, electromagnetic frequencies, especially those that 5G will use, but not only, also the ones we already have, such as the Wi-Fi and the existing 4G network. Because wireless radiation has unquestionably biological effects on humans, animals, plants, and the entire environment, as we will see. And this has been proven by tens of thousands of studies that have been performed on electromagnetic radiation since 1932, so this is very well known. For example, go on to bioinitiative.org. There are over 4,000 peer-reviewed studies prepared by 29 authors from 10 countries. Go to justproveit.net. There are 1,168 studies there. EMF-portal.org, 23,840 studies over there. Powerwatch.org.uk, you will find 1,659 studies on the health effects of EMF. And even on PubMed.gov, thousands of studies on the negative health effects of EMFs. And the overwhelming majority of those studies have found negative effects. What are some of these negative health effects that they found? Well, cancer, for example, oxidative damage, so that means cell damage, DNA damage, DNA failure, memory loss, short and long term, dizziness, anxiety, brain fog, headaches, nose bleeding, cognitive problems, exhaustion, cardiomyopathy, which is the precursor to congestive heart failure, reduced attention span, lower reaction times, involuntary contractions of the muscles, eye damage, disruption of the immune function, learning difficulties, sleep disturbances, serotonin activity that is lowered, reduced fertility and reproduction capabilities, ALS, Parkinson, Alzheimer increases, but also autism. It also disrupts the dielectric system in your body, so the whole brain dielectric system, the nervous system, etc. And many, many more. Those are just some of the more interesting ones. And interestingly enough, even low EMF exposure has been proven to have a negative effect on our microbiome, which is our microbial fauna that is essential for our health. Not only the intensity of 5G is problematic, but also the frequency and the pulsation of the radiation. There is a huge body of evidence that shows that pulsed EMFs, as 5G will utilize, of course, are more biologically damaging than non-pulsed EMFs. And in 1999, even the FDA, together with the NTP, conducted a 16-year, $30 million study examining the effects of EMF radiation. And in 2016, the partial report was released where they found a clear link between EMF and cancer formation. And this has also been, of course, proven by the WHO, World Health Organization report that also found mobile phone radiation to be a carcinogen. Some of these health threats also stem from the fact that our DNA works as a fractal antenna, which sends, receives, and processes signals. And for more information on that, go on to pubmed.gov and type into the search window DNA's fractal antenna in electromagnetic fields, and we'll find a very interesting study that confirms just that. It's also important to keep in mind that the most vulnerable ones to EMFs are our children and fetuses. It has been proven in many studies that they are way more vulnerable to RFs than adults. For example, studies have proven that a young child's brain absorbs 2 to 10 times more radiation than an adult's brain at the same exposure. And therefore, some countries, such as France, have banned Wi-Fi from nursing schools and issued warnings for schools. And you can also see the negative impact of these electromagnetic radiations from our cell phones in the top cancers that kill children today. And they are brain, thyroid, testis, and rectal cancers. And when you think about where we keep our mobile phones, when we use them, of course, close to the brain and our thyroids, and when we have them in our pockets, close to our testes and our rectum, and when we have them in our back pockets, this explains quite nicely why we see this happening. There is also a very interesting confirmed link between autism and electromagnetic fields. You can see the graph on the right here, and they found that 8.4 times higher body voltage levels were found in moms with neurologically impaired children, so with children in the autism range. 8.5 times higher body voltage was found in neurologically impaired children who had electromagnetic fields in their sleeping location, and 20.7 times higher RF radiation in mom's sleeping location when their children were neurologically impaired. And there is currently an international appeal signed by 247 EMF scientists from 42 nations urging the UN and the World Health Organization to exert strong leadership in fostering the development of more protective EMF guidelines and also encouraging precautionary measures and educating the public about the considerable health risks, particularly to children and fetal development. And you can go to 5gspaceappeal.org to see this international appeal by some very famous scientists. And of course, this Internet of Things, or the smart grid as it is also called, will turn every appliance into a permanent radiation device. And we need to understand that EMFs cause a permanent stress state, and that means hormonal disruptions, most and foremost adrenaline depletion that leads to fatal health damages and anxiety and depression and other neurological problems. And we're gonna talk much more in depth about this adrenaline depletion, what happens in your body, in our video next week. So subscribe to our channel and do not forget to hit the notifications button so you don't miss out on that very, very important and interesting video that is coming up. But it leads to a weakened immune system and a depolarization of cells, and eventually, as we have seen, to cancer even. The melatonin depletion leads, of course, to sleep and circadian rhythm disturbances, amongst other things. Actually, all of the health effects, the negative health effects that have been proven by studies, as you have seen, can be very well explained with the adrenaline depletion and the melatonin depletion. as well as the acidic waste accumulation in our body. But more on that in the next week video. What can you do about it? Well, there are some great little devices that are portable that you can take with you wherever you go, and that will help you to reduce the stress. One is the Biosphere Optimization System 318. Link in the description box below, of course. Then also highly recommended is the TriMed CGI, which has a so-called harmonization program for the rectification of your cellular membrane, to repair and repolarize the cells, because as we have seen, there's EMFs lead to a depolarization of the cells. We recommend galvanic therapy, and here there's also a very good device that I can recommend that is called the Vedget Balance Home. Link also to the TriMed, the Vedget Balance, in the description box below for you. They are also, by the way, not very expensive and work just great. Also, you should supplement with melatonin, because as we have seen, this permanent stress state leads to a melatonin depletion. And you must get rid of your acidic waste through right-turning lactic acid supplementation. You can also and should supplement with niacin. And you should stimulate your adrenaline glands, because as we have seen, we suffer from this permanent stress state induces adrenaline depletion. And you can stimulate your adrenaline glands through breathing exercises, for example, the Wim Hof method that we talked about in our last video. If you haven't watched it yet, I highly recommend that you do so, where we talked extensively about how important breathing is, and how Wim Hof was measured with higher adrenaline levels than the control groups. So he is able to stimulate these adrenaline glands through breathing exercises, but also cold exposure. Cold showers are enough, and of course exercise. Now that we have seen what these EMFs do to us humans, and how you can protect yourself or counteract the negative effects at least, and the permanent stress state you are in, let's also talk about the negative effects on our ecosystem. Because 5G has negative effects on our entire environment, EMFs in general. For example, hundreds of birds fell dead from the sky during a 5G experiment in The Hague, Netherlands. You can see the picture down here on the right. This was widely reported even in the mainstream media. Trees are also designed to capture radiation, and they can't distinguish, of course, between the microwaves and the beneficial rays. And the microwaves, regardless of the frequencies, destroy the tree's DNA. This has been confirmed by studies. And studies have also confirmed forest die-offs around antennas. And all life forms are affected negatively, except bacteria and viruses, which, funnily enough, they thrive on microwaves. They reproduce even faster. And we also have already a well-documented insects die-off of 90% in some areas. And insects are, of course, the most important pollinators. So when those die off, then this means all the plants die off, the animals die off. So the trees, the insects, the microorganisms, the animals dying, while those bacteria and viruses are thriving, will lead to an environmental catastrophe, will lead to millions of species to be going extinct in just about 5 generations, and will result in famines for us, weather changes, and millions of deaths. So it is not enough just to protect ourselves, even though this is important as well, and to take care of our health problems, but we also have to protect our entire ecosystem that we truly rely on. There is also a darker side to this 5G technology that is being rolled out that I would like to address, and that is the weaponization and surveillance potential of this technology. Because 5G and Wi-Fi frequencies are well-known weapons frequencies. The 2.4 gigahertz of Wi-Fi, for example, has been used successfully to cause damage to the brain since the 1950s and 60s. The 5G frequencies have been used since 1972 to cause neurological and physiological harm. In 1977, for example, the Soviets tested these 5G frequencies on animals and humans, and for only 50 minutes per day for 60 days, and found already at this very low exposure we will have, as we talked about already, 24/7 around the clock exposure, and they found significant negative health effects as well in the animals as well as in the human group at the exposure of only 50 minutes per day for only 60 days. 5G will also use the same frequency bands as so-called crowd dispersal weaponry. And you can see the picture here on the right. This is what is called an active denial system that is used nowadays for that purpose, and it uses frequencies that are in the 5G range, in the gigahertz range. 5G is also designed to deliver concentrated and focused EMFs in excess of 100 times of current levels in the same way as directed energy weapons do. The technology also allows for 3D mapping of the environment. It uses phased array technology like a radar, which is very good, of course, for identifying and locking onto targets. And therefore, they can also lock onto individuals with the technology and track them. And microwaves are really the perfect stealth weapon. You do not know that you are being targeted. The transmitters, for example, are well hidden in the new LED streetlights, for example, that are being rolled out in some communities. And you don't feel the effects immediately, and you don't know that you are being tracked. And when it comes to the surveillance potential, I would like to quote CIA Director David Petrus, who stated that governments can and will use wireless smart appliances to spy on people, and they will spy on you wherever you are, even in your own home. They will know where you are, what you do, which device you have turned on or off. All of your habits, everything will be transparent with this technology. Let's also answer the question whether our current safety standards are sufficient. So let's have a look at the microwave power density, where we track the health effects versus the safety standards. For the environment, for example, it has been established that premature aging of pine needles happens at just 0.000027 microwatts per square centimeter. For children, it has been proven in studies that headaches, irritation, concentration difficulties, as well as behavioral problems appear at just 0.05 microwatts per square centimeter. The building biology limit in Germany says that over 0.1 microwatts per square centimeters there are extreme concerns. When it comes to Wi-Fi, the sperm DNA fragmentation and the decrease in sperm viability happens at 1.0 microwatts per centimeter squared. Also, headaches, dizziness, irritability, fatigue, weakness, insomnia, chest pain, difficulties breathing and indigestion, they also happen at about 1 microwatts per square centimeter. At 2.5 microwatts per square centimeter, we observe an altered calcium metabolism in the heart muscle cells. At 4 microwatts per square centimeter, we see changes in the hippocampus that affect memory and learning capabilities. At 6 microwatts per square centimeter, we observe DNA damage in the cells. The Electrical Power Institute measured a smart meter, and they found that the radiation from a smart meter is at 7.93 microwatts per square centimeter. So this is well already above the levels where we observe DNA damage to the cells, where we have problems with memory and learning, where we have disturbed calcium metabolism in the heart muscle cells, etc., etc. So this is already high, but the limit in Switzerland, Luxembourg and Liechtenstein is at a maximum of 9.5 microwatts per square centimeter. The limit in Russia, China and Poland is at 10 microwatts per square centimeter. And at 10 microwatts per square centimeter, we observe also changes in behavior, so avoidance behavior, after exposure of only 30 minutes. There was also a measurement of an apartment building with 12 smart meters in it, and they measured the radiation at 19.8 microwatts per square centimeter. So now you might ask yourself, what are the current limits in Canada and the US? And wait for it, they are 600 to 1000 microwatts per square centimeter. And that is tens of thousands of times higher than some other countries, even China and Russia, as we have seen. And you can see it also very nicely in this graph on the right. And it is way above the levels where we observe DNA damage in the cells, calcium metabolism problems, dizziness, irritability, fatigue, all of those effects, negative health effects that we observe already at very, very, very low EMF radiation exposures. And we have limits of tens of thousands of times higher than that already. So this, I think, should suffice to tell you everything about the safety of our current standards in whether they are sufficient or not. And we should not wonder about those health standards, the safety standards, when we look at the regulating agency, which is the FCC in the US. And Norm Alster of Howard University has called the FCC, quote, the most captured agency in DC, end quote, in his book that is entitled The Captured Agency, How the FCC is Dominated by the Industries and Presumably Regulates. He also said the FCC, quote, acts more like a cheerleader than a regulator for the industry, end quote. And to drive his point home, previous chairman of the FCC was Tom Wheeler, who was previously the head of the Wireless Lobbying Association for 14 years. Those wireless lobbying associations he was head of were called NCTA and CTIA, Everything Wireless. In 1993, the FCC and the IEEE passed regulations that set the current standards for acceptable limits of EMF radiation. That is almost 30 years ago, and they have not been updated since, despite new evidence. But the more important fact is that not even one biomedical person was on the team that set these limits. Also, the FCC guidelines were developed for short-term exposure of under 1 hour only, and not for the 24/7 exposure we have. And also only thermal effects were taken into consideration, despite the well-known fact that non-thermal effects are more severe and they cause more harm to our health. And usually the EPA and the CDC take care of health concerns in the US. But in this case, they had zero involvement in setting the limits. As I've mentioned, not even one biomedical person was on the team, and the EPA and CDC were also not involved. And this should also tell you about the safety of these current limits, because most insurance companies, read the coverage, will not cover against health effects of EMF, electromagnetic radiations. And that means that the telecom companies and you are not insured against that risk. In 1996, another problem was created by the Clinton administration when he signed the so-called Telecommunications Act into law. In Section 704 of the TCA, it states that no health or environmental concern can interfere with the placement of telecom equipment. And that's why when you go to your city and complain about the new 5G antenna that has been put in front of your door, you will have issues getting it removed. Also, a word about the people who tell you, yeah, but there are studies that show that there are no negative health impacts of these electromagnetic radiations that stem from the mobile phones and the Wi-Fis. When it comes to this, the question is, does funding matter? And the clear answer, as you can see also from the graph on the right, that has been compiled by Dr. Henry Lai of the University of Washington. Funding really does matter when it comes to these results, because 70% of non-industry studies assessing the wireless radiation, they found out that it is harmful. And when this was funded by the industry, the effects were of course reversed, as you can see from the graph, with only 32% showing that wireless radiation is harmful. So yes, all of the studies that have been performed independently and without involvement of the telecommunication companies showed overwhelmingly negative and harmful effects to our health. And when the industry got involved, the effects were not so evident anymore. Only 32% of the studies found then that there were harmful effects. So don't believe in this industry financed studies. And with that being said, it's time to come to some conclusions and sum it all up. What have we learned? We have learned that it is a fact, irrefutable fact, that EMF causes severe health problems. Even the currently used frequency ranges are damaging, especially to our children and fetuses. And with the introduction of the 5G, the new frequency ranges that will bring 5G with it, these frequency ranges will be added on top of these already dangerous EMFs. And we will be exposed to an inescapable dense EMF radiation soup. And this will mean that the whole environment will suffer from this dense EMF radiation, resulting in species die-offs, famines, and weather changes, amongst others. The 5G frequency range has also been used successfully, as we have seen, in weapon systems and is still used today, for example, for crowd dispersal. The smart grid also, the Internet of Things that 5G makes possible, will result, as we have seen, in a complete surveillance network that will surveil you around the clock, even when you are in your own four walls. And the 5G technology is being rolled out without any studies on the health effects and on especially the health effects to long-term exposure right now. There are no ongoing studies. The industry has clearly stated that they are not financing right now any studies. So we are rolling out a technology that is very harmful potentially without having any clue on what this dense EMF radiation soup will do to our health, but also not only to us, but to our environment that we depend on. So, solutions. Petition for Wi-Fi free schools, because as we have seen, the most vulnerable to EMF radiations are our children and their fetuses. Demand also safety studies on 5G. Petition for fiber optics cables instead of wireless technology. It allows you for the same speeds to be implemented without all of this radiation. Switch also your mobile phones off and your Wi-Fi off whenever and wherever possible. Also, take care of your melatonin and adrenaline depletion that we talked about, and detox your acidic wastes in your cells. Reduce also the permanent stress state that the EMFs cause through breathing exercises, for example the Wim Hof method, but also cold exposures through cold showers, for example, exercise, and of course non-acidic nutrition. And you can also use some really great devices to help you get rid of this permanent stress state. You can use the Biosphere Optimization System 318, the Triomed CGI. Those are great devices for harmonizing and neutralizing the surroundings and getting rid of the harmful effects of 5G. A link to the BOS 318 and the TriMet CGI, of course, in the description box below for you. We will also find more explicit videos on each one of the devices when you follow the links. And you can repair the depolarized damaged cells with galvanic therapy, and here we recommend the Vedget Balance Home, link also in the description box below for you. And you have any questions about this subject or other health-related subjects, please do not hesitate to contact us, shop@lyranara.com. I'm also going to post the complete contact information, including our toll-free phone numbers, in the description box below for you. If you enjoyed this presentation, please support our work, like, share and subscribe. It really helps us out a lot. And with all that being said, I hope that you stay healthy. Until next time.